Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Survivor 50 Wishlist Podcast, an off-season series where we're trying to figure out who could and should come back for Survivor 50. My name is Mike Bloom, and I hope everyone has their slingshot in their back pocket alongside with the phone they're listening to this on, because it's time to talk about Survivor David versus Goliath. An absolutely stacked cast, but who from this deck will make it into our ballot? Only time will tell. And I'm so excited to be joined by somebody who, look, the Goliath tribe itself certainly featured some people who had a claim to fame prior to the season. So it only makes sense that we bring in someone who is an expert on claim to fame herself. So excited to welcome in Jenny Autumn.
Hello. Oh my goodness. Okay. I am, first of all, very, very excited to talk about what is one of my personal favorite seasons. And I think that I feel a little set up here because I am incredibly long-winded. This is no secret to anyone that has listened to me
You're
on
as
a
long-winded
podcast.
as the cyclones that caused them to be evacuated.
Precisely. And I know the point of these podcasts is let's keep them tight. And I have been gifted with talking about one of the, I would say, the most stacked casts, and people that haven't had the opportunity to even come back yet, besides the winner, of course. So I feel like this is a huge task to try to limit my commentary, and stick to the task at hand here, but I'm very, very excited about it because it's very nice to be talking about Survivor and very nice to be talking about a cast that I'm extremely excited about, because this is the stuff I care the most about in
Oh.
Survivor, is the people, is the cast.
Oh,
Like,
they're going to say,
I don't
are
really
the chances
care.
of someone returning?
No. I don't care too much about the game mechanics.
Mm.
Like, I'm not intensely anti-twist, or I
But are
I
you
definitely think
anti-Twish?
no, please don't send Kalish after me. Um but I just really think that if you get a great cast, the season is going to be great no matter what. And so talking about what a future season looks like with people where we already have context for whether they would be good on the show is really exciting, like, task for me to be involved in.
Yeah, I mean, this top to bottom is a really stellar cast for a really stellar season.
I
David
would
versus
see them I would see them like, just run it back. Like, let's, or like, take this cast, put it into a randomizer, uh, do the David versus Goliath thing. While it's a very important part of the season, we could just run it back with this whole cast, and I would watch that in an absolute second. Like,
should they switch? Should they switch tribes?
well, then, I mean, it's the same people starting off with the same
Oh, or
people.
you know what
I
you could
think
do
it's
actually? Yeah, it's David versus Goliath based on how you did in the previous season.
right. Yes. Yeah. Like, so the Davids, I guess, become like the pre-merger people,
Oh
and
yeah, or you could be
I mean,
like
you could
Alex.
argue some people that went far could be Davids.
Yeah, like Angelina was maybe a bit of a David when it came to her chances of winning a jury vote.
And I think Allison,
Mm-hmm.
in the way that, on paper, really, should have been set up for success, and seemed very likable, was just constantly being targeted throughout the season, and really couldn't get any footing for the end game. So you could even argue her as a Goliath, despite making it as far as she did, is a David, if you want to use that theme. But, like, wouldn't that be great? I would totally watch this whole cast again.
Yeah, I
I
think
mean, there's
so
some
as well.
exceptions, but
Yeah, but this is one of those seasons probably alongside Kagayan, where maybe even 46 too, where it's just like, hey,
yeah.
run it all again and see how these people interact with each other. Because yeah, we really get it all in David versus Goliath. Where yes, we're still in the late 30s of Survivor, so there still are a bunch of advantages and idols thrown in, but you have a lot of dynamic gameplay. You have a lot of unlikely friendships, unlikely rivalries, friendships becoming rivalries. We have an incredible amount of character moments and comedy. We have an example of one of the quote unquote celebrities cast on the show doing really well in Mike White. We have a bevy of big, flashy moves made, especially in the post-merge. So there is so much to get into from this season. Not to put the cart before the horse, I do have a feeling that this cast probably, Jenny, when the ballot comes around, will have more than 5 people representing it, but it is our job today to make sure we walk through with 5 and 5 only.
I mean, I'm it's easier than 4. So I'm very glad that we've reached the point in this activity where we're allowing a little bit more room for people here, because it's going to hurt me to leave some of these people off what we do here regardless. But man, just doing 4 would be really, really tough. So giving me at least one more slot, I'm happy about that, because I think I could easily pick like 10 with like no hesitation.
All right, well, let's see if you hesitate, starting with our final 3 here. 2 Goliaths and the David that took them down. Our winner, who will return for Winners at War, in Nick Wilson. The aforementioned Mike White, who is an actor, writer, who is also an avowed super fan of Survivor, who got cast on the show and finishes admirably in second place. And then, of course, one of the characters of the season, the negotiator, the jacket requester, the ladder carrier herself, Angelina Cardona Keeley. First thing I will say is I think, Jenny, we're going to have much more of a fruitful discussion about 2 out of these 3. Nick, after going on Winners at War, went and ran for a spot in the Kentucky House of Representatives, where he currently serves. I think we're sort of like barking up the wrong family tree, if you will, if we're asking if he would want to come back for another chance at Survivor after being able to make his way into politics.
Yeah, I mean, I am of the mind, similar to many people that have spoken on this, that I would prefer to see people that have not had another opportunity to play already. And
Mm-hmm.
how convenient that it leaves off one person on this cast. Maybe they'll do a future blood water. I'm sure Nick has some cousins. Maybe he can come back down the line. But I think in this, given point in time, I we've seen 2 seasons of Nick in fairly close succession.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you know, I despite that, I don't have him super high on my list of people that I would want to see play again from this
Mm-hmm.
season anyway. But I think given the fact that he got another opportunity to play in Winners at War very shortly after winning his season, and then all of the other stuff outside of Survivor, it's not happening. I don't think that anyone is really expecting Nick to be a big returnee for season 50, but maybe I'm wrong about that. I just don't personally see it.
I agree with that. Let's talk about Mike White then,
Okay.
because
That's
what
an
what
interesting convo.
yes, this is a really interesting convo
Mhm.
because, again, Mike White was a previous reality TV competitor. He had actually been on 2 seasons of The Amazing Race with his dad prior to becoming a Survivor contestant. So he is technically one show away from completing the trifecta, though I don't think he would ever go on to Big Brother. He's enough around LA. He's not going to step a foot inside of that house. But Mike was really fun to watch, between his dry, sarcastic wit in the confessionals and the fact that he put together a pretty damn good game, to the point that I think some would say Mike White was robbed. I think the common
They
conventional
might.
wisdom is that Mike at least stood a good chance of winning, but apparently in the final tribal council, he pretty much said, like, listen, I'm already very successful in Hollywood. This guy comes from very humble beginnings. He's doing something very noble as a public defender. Like, give the money to him. I don't necessarily need it. Then Mike goes on to do his most high profile work of his career,
Yeah.
being the force behind The White Lotus, an incredibly successful HBO miniseries that is currently, I think, filming its 3rd season, and of course featuring cameos from his former Survivor cast members. I believe he's also said that Survivor was a large inspiration behind The White Lotus, this idea of people being in this beautiful tropical environment and basically forced to spend time together despite their conflicting backgrounds, morals, and emotional statuses. I have a couple of comments on the record about Mike White when it comes to
Mhm.
returning. The first is from his quarantine questionnaire. When asked if he would play again, he says, I had the perfect Survivor experience, IMHO. So if you'd asked me a year ago, I would have probably said no. But then Probst recently, out of nowhere, said to me very emphatically, there was no way I was ever going back on the show. I don't know why in the hell he said that, but it was a fatal mistake. He should know you don't deliberately provoke a Survivor contestant by telling them what you're thinking and that you're voting them off the island for all time. That just makes me want to scramble. Now I have to use subterfuge to come up with a conniving scheme to stay alive and prove him wrong and outlast him. So because Jeff said that, I will most definitely be back. Some way, somehow, I will be back. If not as a contestant, then as the show's new host. You know what you did, Jeff. Kisses. Now, before we get into, I would say, the more sincere statement, what are your thoughts about the threat that Mike made to Jeff Probst in his quarantine questionnaire?
I mean, we stan a petty king. Listen, you
Oh, yeah,
don't
I mean, did you
decide
listen
what
to his
Mike
exit interview with Rob back in the day?
exactly, right? Like I I really think, and it's funny because I did know this story, but I didn't actually know the part where he alluded to maybe I'll come back as host. And I was about to say, hey, what's the ultimate power move here? Maybe Probst can stop you from returning as a contestant, but why don't you just take his job? That's the ultimate power move. That's how you end up back on Survivor as Mike White. And I certainly would be here for it. You know, I think there's a lot of reason why we wouldn't see Mike White again. His life is fine. He got the experience. Everything he said in that quote, right? But man, he literally could have won. Like, I really, obviously people can talk about like what they would have done differently in terms of voting and stuff, but it is an absolute real possibility that if some things were done a little bit differently at Final Tribal Council, that he is our winner. And I think that, while his life is fine, there's got to be a little part of that keeps you up at night. However, I don't think it is in Mike White's best interest to return as a contestant on Survivor. I think that it's really, really hard to do what he did and win, given all of the, what he has done with his, career and success since then. Because he wasn't as big of a name. He was definitely like, a pseudo celebrity
Oh, yeah, I
stunt
mean,
casting
when
for
you're
sure.
on
Like
the
he
same
was
season as the George Bushy of Tushy,
right?
how can
But
you compare?
I just think that it's kind of hit a different level since then. And I don't even I besides the pettiness of Jeff trying to like say that he's deciding for him that he's not going to come back, I don't know that it's in Mike White's best interest to do it. But if he truly loves the show, it's like if he got the call and people wanted him, I have a hard time imagining he says no.
To that point, Mike and Angelina did a joint interview on the Drop Your Buffs podcast about a year ago, summer of 2023. And Mike was asked once again, would you come back to Survivor? And Mike said, basically, you got to give me the dates in advance. But yeah, I would definitely do it again for sure. So listen, to your point, maybe it'll be diminishing returns pretty much no matter what for Mike White. I thought he would say no just because of, again, like where his life is right now with the White Lotus. And look, who knows if he does get the call for 50, maybe post production happens in a way where he couldn't feasibly do it. But I was happily surprised to find out as recently as last year, he would definitely go back and play again.
And I also think that, like, I'm delighted to hear that as well because I would love to watch him on TV again. But I think that he benefits from a situation where, like you said, if he has the dates enough in advance, I think that like he, of course, he could do it. Like Why not? And maybe he doesn't care about the chances of diminishing returns. He isn't necessarily like, okay, well, I'm only coming back if I know that I have a truly a shot to win, because I need this money, and like what I sacrifice to be there like needs to end up
I
being
need to
like
bring more
fiscally.
A-list actors on. Is he basically crowdfunding for the White Lotus of like, we need more money to bring on all these Oscar-winning actors onto the show?
Like, can he write it off in terms of like,
It's a business trip.
he's gonna write a new show, but he needs the inspiration from
Oh, I
his
love that
second
idea.
trip. I mean, you never know. You will never, hear me objecting to seeing Mike White play Survivor. Like I said, I don't know how it would go. It really would depend on who else is there. But I'm very delighted to know that he would do it again. And who knows what Jeff really said. Like, and this isn't to say that Mike White will for sure take things out of context and maybe misunderstood the intention of something being said. But is there a chance that Jeff was just being like, "You're not going to play again," like saying that as if
Okay.
like you don't want to play again? Like, why would you do that? And then Mike, took that as like a challenge, being like, "Oh, you're telling me I can't do it again?" And that's where he took like the offense. It's not outside the realm of possibility.
Yeah, or could
So
be
Jeff might
reverse
not be against
psychology.
it.
Could be
Yeah.
reverse psychology as well. And plus, it'd be fun to see Mike White play in the new era, considering that he was the one that had, of course, the infamous "Is it fun?" question that has dictated so much of the choices Jeff has made over the past 5 years.
Yeah.
And let's talk about somebody who also may have incorporated into the new era, because Angelina, arguably her legacy lives on in every new era season. Who's to say, Jenny, that had she not tried to negotiate for Rice at the beginning of a challenge for sitting out, that convention would not have been brought into the new era. Of course,
Mhm.
Angelina, I think if you ask a lot of Survivor fans, her and one other person from this season are a lot of names that fans go to of like, well, they got to cast people from the later 30s because these people need to come back. Where do you stand on that? Would you like to see Angelina back?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I actually think that Angelina is someone that I could see faring better in a
Mm,
returnee season. You know, I think that she has such an incredible and entertaining like story in this season, and there might be people that would argue like, well, she was being kept around specifically to be a zero vote finalist. But I think that, how many years ago was David versus Goliath now,
so
Mike?
it aired in 2017. Oh no, sorry, it aired in 2018,
2018.
fall of
Okay.
2018.
Okay, so we're what, around 6 years ago, and then maybe it
Hmm.
was closer to 7 that they played. Um,
Several.
I think several, yes. I think that people can change. How old is Angelina now?
So Angelina right now is 35.
Perfect. I think that there is actually quite a difference between playing when you're like 28 or something and 35. She's become a mother since then,
That's
I
to say, not
believe.
to mention she's become a mother of two since her time playing Survivor.
Yeah. And I think that she gets on a returnee season, she is underestimated. And I think that she's probably gained some perspective.
Hmm.
And maybe like she was like entertainingly like unself-aware at points, but like she's not lacking self-awareness completely. Like she has instincts and knows the game well enough that I think, you know, she probably, especially watching some of it back, took some like lessons away from her time on David versus Goliath. And I actually feel very strong, not just about her, being someone who should be in consideration for 50, but actually like potentially doing well. Like, yes, she made it to the final 3, but I think that in terms of like gameplay, I think that she could really wow us. And we talk a lot about like what themes could be when we're talking about season 50. I know we joke a lot about game changers. I don't know that we would ever see game changers too, but if you were ever using the theme of game changers for a returnee season and you are not including Angelina on that cast, she created the rice negotiation. Okay,
Yeah.
like you said,
I mean,
it's criminal to leave her out.
I mean, production is very high on Angelina, which is interesting because I remember in the first few episodes of David vs. Goliath for the B&B, we actually came up with a game called Angelina or Natalia, where like the two of them were both so kind of enigmatically in the background that it's like, oh, they got nothing going on. But Angelina came alive as soon as that swap happened, and as soon as she saw that delicious jacket draped over Natalie Cole's shoulders, and she knew she wanted it, and a mean queen was born. I remember the game within the game, the Rebus puzzles from season 41. One of them was, Natalie, can I have your jacket? Like, that shows the legacy of Angelina. I do think, to your point, it'd be interesting to see what she looks like on a second time around. You know, would it be, I'm not putting her in the level of coach of like, oh my God, she's so delusional. She doesn't realize how she comes across, but it'd be interesting to see, does Angelina sort of lean into that type of stuff? Does it even matter because she kind of has that confident, assertive persona that had her do these things in the first place, that there won't necessarily be a wink, wink, nudge, nudge to the camera? I'm not entirely sure, but she did say on Drop Your Buffs that basically if it worked out with her family, of course she does have 2 young children, but if she was able to leave them for a brief period of time, she would absolutely go back and do it. And so, yeah, I'm begging Survivor production to make it work. Have an on-island babysitter if you need it to happen, because we need Angelina back on our screens.
Imagine if that was a thing, and you know what possibilities could have been opened in terms of returnees in some of these previous seasons. Maybe people wouldn't have had to go far down the list on some of these
Yeah.
returnee casts where we're like, really? That
Oh,
person?
you're
Oh,
offering,
sure.
yeah, in-house childcare? Great. When could I start?
Like that would be perfect. No, I really really hope that she's high on, you know, production's priorities. Like you said, I've gotten the sense that they would love to see her return. Just based on, you know, her inclusion in like the lore, like you said. So she's just such a fun character. And as much as, you know, when we're looking at creating a returnee cast, you are going to be focusing on big gamers. You want
Mhm.
people that like played the game hard and like, you know, we all love a strategist. You also want those people to be characters. Like if you can get, you know, the big strategic powerhouses that are also incredibly entertaining, perfect. But you also just need to make sure that there is a presence of people that know the game, um, will play hard, because the Angelina, she was not slacking. She maybe made some decisions along the way that were questionable and could have, you know, done her some damage in terms of securing some votes to win. But she took it seriously and she was a nonstop character. And
Mhm.
I think that it's very, very important to cast people like that. Um, and I really I can't stress enough that I actually feel really optimistic about what she could do on a second run. So don't count her out.
She's
I
ready to
obviously,
run.
yeah, I would love it. I would absolutely love it.
All right. Well, the hits on keep a coming as we move into our jury here, working our way up from the bottom to the top. We have, I believe she was a lunchroom worker at the time in our merge boot, Elizabeth Olsen. We have the wrestler that has gone on to even more fame, I believe, since his time on Survivor in John Hennigan, blindsided by the minority split vote that the Davids pull off. We have Hot Cop Dan, who finds like 2 or 3 idols in the season and ends up getting taken out due to the idol nullifier. We have Alec Merlino, who ends up surviving a 6-hour endurance battle with Christian before his body says F it and he gets voted out. We have the Godfather, the trucker Carl Boudreaux, who is riding high on a speedboat before he is taken out by his own Davids. We have, of course, dear friend of the podcast, Gabby Pascuzzi, who decides to try to turn the game onto one of her closest ally, the guy next to her in Christian Hubicki, only to get taken out due to Christian's idle play. We have, of course, Christian himself, the robot scientist who can solve a slide puzzle like it's nobody's business. Where is Davey? He's right next to Christian, the guy that just barely made it onto the season, but made enough of an impact that he gets the SIA money from this season. We have the aforementioned Dr. Allison, who ends up becoming sort of like the decoy vote for the majority of the post-merge, and our fallen angel in the form of Kara K. What I want to focus on is going back to, of course, the other person that I feel is a shoo-in to come back if they're looking for people from this season, Christian Hubicki.
Yes. Yes.
When the show uses his first confessional or one of its first confessionals as a time-lapse montage of him explaining how he built a slide puzzle algorithm and that's how he aced the opening challenges, you know the show absolutely loves this guy.
And how could they not? I'm sorry. If you don't love Christian Hubicki, I don't know what to tell you. He
Sorry for
First of
you.
all, sorry to you. I don't know what's missing in your life, but I hope you find it. Because what a joy. He he was such a special character in that, like, he was this geeky, like, underdog type, but he had, like, this chaotic energy about him that it was like,
Mhm.
it wasn't just like he was just running numbers
Yeah,
and,
I remember
like,
his preseason interview with Josh. He was all about sort of like the free radicals and entropy and purposely seeding chaos so that he can benefit from it and try to make sense of all of it.
and he, provided so much incredible commentary throughout this season. Like, he really is a constant narrator throughout this season, because if how could you not take the sound bites you were getting from him? Like, it does a disservice to some of the other cast because it's like, maybe they got other people talking about certain things, but when they got the gold that they were getting from Christian, just like this interesting way that he talks about the game and anything, how could you not want to include that? And I just think now, like, Christian, and I'm incredibly biased, but I think I'm biased in a way where it's like, I'm biased because I love Christian because I've met him and he's my friend. Like, I have played hours and hours of Goose Goose Duck with this man about this point, and he is far more chaotic and wild
Yes.
than I think we even experienced in his run on David versus Goliath. And God, what I would do to see him play again. I really feel strongly that he is in the top part of the list. Um, and that brings me joy because I think that we would, be robbing ourselves to not allow Christian to play again.
Yeah, his mind for the game is so much fun, whether it's him bringing it about it from a numerical perspective, him talking, for example, about how the three tribe format doesn't work in the new era with no swaps, actually working out the number of interactions that people can possibly have with each other in the current new era format, to him immediately hopping in the chat following the whole do or die twist to explain what the Monty Hall paradox is. Like, Christian is so incredibly passionate about the
Yes.
game. And what's also so fun about the unconventionality of Christian as well is his arc, because Christian becomes at the merge the biggest threat in the game, which, again, looking at him, no offense to Christian, you would imagine that's not necessarily the case. But at that John Hennigan vote, all the Goliaths immediately look over to Christian and feel he needs to get taken out. And so a lot of this post-merge arc for Christian is like him escaping by the skin of his teeth. In one instance, Davey plays an idol on him. On another, he plays an idol on himself. He wins that essential immunity at the final 10 as
He
well.
beats
And
out
so,
Alec Merlino in an endurance,
yeah,
like,
he does arguably the most iconic endurance challenge possible, where he basically just talks everyone off of the ledges so that he takes home immunity. Like, he
incredible.
is such an incredible character, combined with, again, being this big strategist on top of something that production assumingly loves as well, which is his ability to play with and against various advantages, which obviously is rife in the new era. Christian is hungry to have all these different toys to throw into his tool chest that he can, workshop over the course of his time on the show. So I think it honestly is the perfect recipe to bring him back. And I would imagine as well, he obviously was on the podcast with me for Redemption Island. He has said he would want to come back as long as it worked out with the schedule. And even if it doesn't, he is tenured now. So there's not a lot
Yeah.
of recompense for him to say, yeah, I'm just going to go off for a month. My students can deal with a sub.
Let's just line up the sabbatical the way it needs to. You know what I mean? We don't need the babysitter. Let's just get that sabbatical lined up properly, and Christian's there. And yeah, I he's just such a special player in that he's, incredibly analytical, but he is also a social powerhouse, and how like lovable and good he is with interacting with people. Like, he gets pulled into the brochachos. Like, you know what I mean? Like
He's
this,
the comptroller of Slamtown.
exactly. Like, I just think that I don't know what a second run looks like for Christian. It obviously depends
Hmm.
a lot on, who else is there. And like you said, he did get built up as this big threat, and had more than one idol played on him, one by somebody else and one by himself, that kind of keep him around longer than he might have otherwise lasted because of this threat that gets put on him. So I don't know if that's something that carries on in a returnee season, but God, I would be front row seat to watch it and cheering him on, because he I would turn down so many other people. And I would also argue that where people will be like, "Oh, well, that's the same archetype as Christian." Like, if we're talking maybe even new era people, I'm sorry, there's no one like him. There is
Yeah.
just no one like him. You might say that he is like a particular archetype and maybe compare some other players to him, but I just think that he has something very special and interesting about him that I just can't find in players that have come after him.
All right, well, let's take one step to his right. As someone who is often synonymous with Christian when talking about David versus Goliath, because they go again from best of buds to her plotting his demise. Let's talk about Gabby here, because I think, on paper, if you ask someone several years ago, what do you remember from Gabby from David versus Goliath? To be honest, the answer would be most likely from a lot of fans, oh, she's the one that cried a lot. But I think if you look closer into a lot of the stuff that she was doing, again, she had this storyline with Christian. She is, even before Jesse and Cody had one of these big talking points of like, okay, do you want to turn on your ally early on? You know what happened with Gabby and Christian, where again, Gabby wasn't necessarily on anyone's radar until she turns on Christian. And then it starts to become, okay, I believe it's the remaining Goliaths are like, all right, well, let's just throw some votes onto Gabby here in case Christian plays an idol. Gabby, I think, is also, again, from our perspective, Jenny, someone that we have played a lot of these social strategy games with, has proved that she has a head for it, as well as a really great sense of humor. Something that should be noted as well is that the call for Survivor 40 obviously went out to, I think, a lot of people in the 30s to see who would want to come back no matter what the theme was before Winners at War. For what it's worth, both Gabby and Christian are on record as having received a call, too. So I do think, especially, and we'll talk about this again with someone like Jesse and Cody, I would not be surprised, Jenny, if there's an angle of, oh, we want to bring Christian and Gabby back to see if they'll, butt heads or if they'll inevitably join together again.
Listen, whatever argument you want to make to include them both, I am on board. I know I just gave this like wild, passionate speech about the need for Christian. But I will stump for Gabby till the end of time. I was a fan of her preseason. Like when I listened to all the preseason
Oh,
interviews,
yeah, she was my winner pick.
I this was around the time where like the 30s we got into, a casting groove where I finally felt like I saw people that I related to on the cast, and that I felt like,
Mm.
oh, that's kind of like me. And in years since Gabby playing Survivor and just getting to know her on a personal level, like there are a lot of reasons why I feel like this avatar type, connection to her. So selfishly, I love her. But I again, she's someone where I think that, how she's grown and,
Mhm.
where she's gone in life since playing, I think that she will bring a different energy to a second time. I think she's learned a lot, and I think that
Mhm.
I just think that she's a different person, that but in a very, very positive, like, really true to herself kind of way.
Yeah.
And I would love to see, like, because she played pretty fearless the first time. And I
Mhm.
just think that you see that in a different way, in a returnee season. And again, another person where, if you've seen her play other social strategic games, if you've seen her play Goose Goose Duck, I think she's done a little bit of the Blood on the Clock Tower. She is a wild one, and she will take swings. And I just think that she's so much more entertaining than you might remember her as. And
Mhm.
I just think it would be, again, criminal to not have her very, very high on your list of returnees in general, not just for this season. I feel so, so strongly about it. I
Yeah.
I will be a mess if she gets back on. Watching it will be hard. But I absolutely need it.
Yeah, I mean, on the note of, how much she has changed. I mean, Gabby played David versus Goliath when she was 25. And look, we certainly talk about this with like 21-year-olds, but yes, if you know what Gabby has gone through in the past few years, she has changed career, she has changed location, she has really come into her own, I think, as a person. And I think she's definitely someone that would say like, "Oh yeah, I wish I played Survivor at this age than instead
Right.
playing at 25 where I think I knew a lot, but I didn't necessarily." So, I think there is a lot of there to bring Gabby back again, especially alongside Christian and building out that storyline. I mean, let's keep continuing down the line here because I think there's also a lot of there to one Davy Rickenbacker. Again,
All the hits,
while
all the hits.
yeah, so it's wild. One cast a fortuitous phone call away from Davy not being on this season. He would have been on edge of extinction
Yep.
were it not for a last minute dropout. But man, Davy made good on this last minute opportunity. He immediately comes in with the blurred personality and reads these people like comic. He's the one who will find an idol himself and play it on Christian. He'll do the very fun move of distracting everybody by spinning his stick and showing off his moves while Nick goes to find the advantage. He's somebody who's going to go off on his own and participate in one of those play in this puzzle to earn an idol for yourself. So Davey absolutely hit the ground running, in my opinion. Yes, did get blindsided a couple times, particularly on the Carl vote, but had such like a winning personality that obviously it won him some money in the form of Sia's fan favorite. And I do think that Davey and Gabby as well are two people, and that's another reason why I think Gabby could stand a chance of coming back, is that they get talked about a surprising amount when I ask new era contestants about their favorite players or who they identify with the most. And maybe to your point, Jenny, that speaks to the type of people they cast on Survivor nowadays,
Mhm.
or it could possibly speak to the impact that they made as contestants, or both.
I mean, I wanna say both for sure, but you're right, like, man, I love me some Davey, and I loved him when the season was playing out, and I just he needs to be on TV again. And you know,
Well,
we almost we almost got it sooner than we thought, and I'm still upset about that.
yeah, and so for those that don't know, there were rumors that Davey was going to be on the cast of The Traitors season 3. And it does feel like a little bit like the universe balancing itself out, right? That he
Mm.
like just made it onto the cast of David versus Goliath at the last minute. It only makes sense that eventually he'd get cut from a major reality show at the last minute, unfortunately.
Right, you know, and I really do hope that in this case that it's for, you know, better things to come at a later time, and things work out in a way where you know, it wasn't meant to be for a reason. Um because he played hard. He
Mhm.
like had trinkets, like he had relationships on all different, you know, he had links with a bunch of different pockets of people in this game. Like you said, it was an imperfect game. There were points where he wasn't looped in on what was going on. But he was so fun. Like he just had this joyous
Mhm.
attitude at every turn. And that is, I love watching people play the game and having fun with it, and I just feel like Davey really embodied that energy.
Mhm.
I don't know. I just feel super strongly that he has like some sort of like special sauce and like needs to be on TV again. I would love for it to be Survivor 50. Um and yeah, I don't know, I just think that uh the way that they've cast, like you said, the way that they've cast the show in the new era, like I think has changed a little bit, and I think that the influence of characters like, you know, the ones that we're talking about here have actually had an impact on that, and that's why you're getting people like referencing these players. So you know, if they're being so highly referenced, like why would we not bring them back? I think that
Yeah.
Davey's really, really special.
So look, I say this with no impunity to the other players, but I do think from a returnee potential perspective, those three are on an echelon of their own when it comes to these jurors.
I
So
agree.
yeah, so is the who do you want to talk about on the next tier? Because I have like a couple, but I'll be completely candid here. I think there is a significantly smaller chance of anyone in the other seven making it onto a list, even if we necessarily want them to.
And I think that that would be a different conversation if it weren't for how obviously strong those 3 are.
Hmm.
And I don't think that this is just our personal bias here. I think that they're widely seen by the survivor community in general as people that they would like to see return from this season.
Yep.
So it's not even so much a knock at the rest of the jury. It's just that like it's hard to compete with how strong we feel about these
Yeah,
people
they
returning.
know it's hard to compete with Christian. That's why they tried to vote him off a bunch of times.
Exactly, exactly. But with that said, I feel like in terms of an overall jury on people that I think would be fun in a returnee season, um, this is such a strong jury. So it's like being limited to only being able to take a couple from the season is really the only thing that's keeping some of these people further down. I I will admit, I during the season, I was a little bit of a Kara truther. Do we remember the Kara
Mm.
truthers? I loved Kara K. I thought she's my kind of player, like in terms of you know, just being a highly social, you know, force. She was very, very well liked. And I also think that there's a situation where if she doesn't lose in fire making, that she could have won the season just based on
Mm.
like people's feelings about her. I don't know if there's been anything in recent years that has gone against that idea, but
Yeah,
I
there was a little bit that I apparently Angelina stood a better chance at Final Tribal Council than what has been shown to us, and then it was actually Kara that was more of the goat, apparently, according to On Island stuff.
listen. Okay. I I like there's, you know, there's issues with that because it's like people will always talk about things in the past with like it's hard to have it not be biased by how things turned out. And the what ifs are kind of crazy, but I really do think that Kara's the kind of person you put her in another cast, she's going to do well because she is so um she's got a it seems like she's got a very magnetic personality. She works in real estate.
Hmm.
And I think that, you know, having that personality and energy, I think has brought her a lot of success in her career. And I truly think that she's the kind of person where, you know, you put her on another cast, she's one of those people that's like, she's gonna do pretty well a lot of the time. And I think that we, just didn't see as much of her story as we could have just because of all the other stuff that was going on. But it just seems like the way that people talk about her in game and just like the relationship she had with people that she had the social game part that can often win people the game.
Hmm.
Just the natural social ability that sometimes just wins you the game because you get to the end and you just have to get enough people that like you and want to hand you the win. And I just think that there's something about Kara that she's got that.
So a couple people I wanted to highlight from the jury. Carl was such a
Ugh,
fun presence. I mean, especially once Pat was medevaced in a considerably younger David tribe besides himself, he definitely stood out. And just the arc of him getting quite literally drunk with power was
I
so much
forgot
fun.
I forgot he got drunk on more than one occasion because I feel like we always think about the reward that where they're on the boat and he's drinking
Hmm.
the beers, like there's Davy pouring the beer on his head, like that particular reward being where he got a little tipsy and a little messy. But I actually realized that he was doing that at the merge too. Like he was there was like numerous occasions where people were like, Carl was drunk and he was talking about this and he's talking about that. And I'm like, man, what a fun guy. I love Carl. And again, like throw him on another season and I would love to watch that because I think that he just is who he is and he's always going to give that energy.
Hmm.
And he's going to have fun with it. He's another person I think that was like truly having fun out there.
Yeah,
Probably
and I
because he was
think
sloshed half the time.
listen, he had his own trademark onomatopoeia. I don't think people can think of "bing" and be a Survivor
Yes.
fan without
And it's
Carl. Much
Bing.
to yeah,
It's Bing,
you know,
not Ding.
not ding, much to Microsoft's detriment. The other person I want to bring up is actually the person he binged against here. I want to talk about Hot Cop Dan for a second
All
because
right.
Dan is somebody who has admitted he was kind of recruited for the show. He didn't watch Survivor ahead of time, and he had gone viral previously due to like being a random SWAT officer, right? That was like, oh my God, look at this hot cop. But for what it's worth, whatever he thought he was doing it incredibly actively, right? We have that scene in the premiere where we actually have our first like pseudo flashback where it turns out that Dan had found the idol while he was looking in the premiere. He starts this like kindling of a thing with Kara on the island, which confused a lot of us considering maybe the social media activities of another
Yes.
contestant on this season. But Dan is somebody who was very vocal during his time on the show, a vehement member of Slam Down, someone that, much like Davey, tried to use an idol on Angelina that ended up not necessarily working and getting out his number one ally. And for what it's worth, kind of got done in pretty unfairly of
Yeah.
playing an idol and then having it all get nullified by something that had not existed in the game before that he had absolutely no knowledge of. I do wonder if, and I've been talking about this a lot with these seasons, if like 40 was an all-star season with the 30s contestant instead of winners of war, I could have seen a case for Dan to come back then because he does have that sort of like Torch was quite literally snuffed out preemptively and has the chance to find idols, ready to showmance, etc. I feel like his time has passed, especially again compared to those other three jurors we're talking about. But he is someone that I did want to shout out.
No, I definitely see what you're saying. I have a hard time parting with some of the, stuff that I remember about his, his relationships with people on his tribe. Like you said, like he had some sort of thing going on with Kara, and like while they're both still in the game, she was like basically trying to distance herself from him, being like, this guy is
Mhm.
like kind of emotional and erratic and is very bad for my game. Like, I need to, like, we almost, it wasn't really a couple, but it was almost like the I'm breaking up with you while we're still on the island. And I don't know. Yes, he did get screwed by the idol nullifier, but I don't know like what his real chances were to do well in terms of a win. Again, it's hard to say. But you're right. Like if we were doing, again, I don't know why I'm bringing up game changers so much, but if you wanted to do a game changers theme, you could have been like, did Dan you could argue anyone as a game changer based on what they did with 34, but like you could be like, Dan changed the game. He got his idol nullified, even though he didn't get it nullified. But like I could see them making that argument if they had done a returnee season including his cast like a few years ago. But I agree with you that I just don't know if I see it now.
To briefly dote on the other four here, Allison is incredibly nice, and I'm not entirely sure if she deserved necessarily, everything that was done to her, especially the way Angelina purposely hid a fake idol so she could play it. And she's, gotten married, become a mother now, so kudos to her. I think probably a little too low key to bring back from this cast. Same thing with John Hennigan and Elizabeth to a certain extent. I think Elizabeth was a really fun personality, and out of these people certainly remains one of the more like actively vocal members of the community still from this cast. But I think again, just does not ping compared to a lot of the other people that we've talked about. And suffice it to say, for those that don't know, before the season had, I believe it was between the cast being announced and the season premiering, Alec posted a photo on social media of him and Kara, which pretty much explicitly broke his NDA, and so he was banned from appearing at the reunion. So I do not think he'd even be in production's good graces. He has a better chance at appearing on a second season of The White Lotus than Survivor after that.
Yeah, which is too bad, honestly, because I in terms of, in a vacuum without taking all of that logical stuff into consideration about his chances of returning, he's someone who's actually higher on my list of people I would enjoy seeing again from this cast. And, his relationship with Kara like continued on after the season. I think they broke up for a little bit, then got back together. I think maybe they aren't together anymore, but at least they seem like they're very close friends. And I just think that we didn't get to see as much of him as I would have liked to, even though he did have like that iconic turning on Natalia
Mm-hmm.
in the swap tribes. Like I think that he had a lot of potential for being a really, really fun character if he got to play again. Because he I don't know, he's kind of a ball of energy. And yeah, it's just too bad that it turned out that way, that he said F it, and maybe didn't realize what he was truly saying F it to, because I'd like to think that he would take Survivor up on an offer if they called him again. I think he feel like he's a very adventurous guy and not the kind that would say no to opportunities.
All right, let's move into our pre-jury
Oh,
here. So we have, of course, the tragically medevaced with his back, Pat Cusack. We have the first true boot from the Davids and the youngest castaway this season in Jessica. We have Jeremy, who caused quite a stir with his postseason press. We have the MMA fighter B, who ends up leaving the game after getting an injury that could jeopardize her career. We have the aforementioned Natalia, who provides one of the more fiery exits in recent memory. And speaking of that fire, let's bring the Natalie Napalm with Natalie Cole. And we have our final pre-merge boot in one of the most unique contestants of this season in Lyrsa. But of course, Jenny, when we're talking about this pre-merge, the conversation has to start. And really, for me, we can certainly dote on a couple people, but I think when we're talking about who could feasibly get brought back from this pre-jury group, it's got to begin with Natalie.
yes, yes.
Definitely one of the biggest characters from the jump. I think the person that would say even more so than other celebrities around her that she embodies Goliath tendencies the most, which makes her this big force early on. And even her ouster, which is a big flip and a blind side, leads to, as mentioned before, one of the most iconic memes in Survivor history.
Yeah, I mean, and this isn't meant as any disrespect to the rest of this pre-merge, but when you look at this pre-merge, like I see an icon. Okay, like I see a very, very clear person
Mm-hmm.
that it should be in the conversation here, and I don't think that anyone should be against having Natalie on their TV again. I would love to see her with a whole different crop of people. I would love to see where that leads us. Because she just the queen energy that she brings, like she is the Goliath queen, and like the podcasts I've heard with her, since being on Survivor, I truly think that she would accept the offer in a
Mm-hmm.
second, and we would all be enriched for that. Just such a one of the most memorable and iconic jurors that you could ever think of. And it makes me like, through this exercise, I've been thinking about, like, God, I wish that there could be like several returnee seasons with like
Mm-hmm.
different themes. And because I think that you could easily do a like pre-juror only returnee, or a pre-juror tribe even on a certain
Mm-hmm.
season. And I just think that she's top of the list when it comes to that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we want contestants to start unproblematic drama on Survivor, and Natalie brought that. Again, from the very beginning, she was unabashedly herself and then immediately started wearing thin with everyone around her. And it got to the
She
point that
will No, I was gonna say she will insult you and then be like, "And I love your skin." You know what I mean?
yes,
Like,
exactly. Like,
you're
that
glowing.
is the complexity that she gained. She has some of my favorite final words in recent memory with, "I didn't give Angelina my jacket because I didn't know if she was part of the reason why I'm out, so why should I? I don't have to, and I chose not to." Like, it's just
Wearing
such a
it.
yeah, she's just such a fantastic character. From a gameplay perspective, listen, I'm not entirely sure, how much more she could bring, though maybe it's just a circumstance of, like, put her on a tribe that keeps on winning and let her get to the merge and see how she can individually dominate this game. But no matter how many episodes you get Natalie Cole for, it's going to be an incredible time. And I would say, give this woman as many articles of clothing as possible and just have her be the closed goodwill of, like, nope, no charity here, people. You're going to have to do something really good in my eyes to get my clothing.
Yeah, let's increase the amount of articles of clothing that people can bring, but only for Natalie, and she has to hoard them and decide if anyone gets them, and hopefully no one does.
The other person that I really want to highlight here is Lyrsa.
Lyrsa, yes.
Oh, yeah, I absolutely love Lyrsa. She is
Me
such a
too.
fiery personality. Of course, her it's as colorful as the hair that she dons. And Lyrsa had a little bit of an underdog narrative to her, right? That, like,
Yeah.
initially she was perceived to be a liability in the challenges, to the point that she is called out alongside Christian as, "Hey, Goliaths, pick who you think are the two weakest Davids to complete this challenge." And then they end up beating the Goliaths. Lyrsa has a very fun relationship with Elizabeth. That's this classic Survivor example, right? Of, like, two people who probably would just pass each other on the street without giving each other the time of day, become each other's tightest allies. And I don't think Lyrsa got screwed as much as other members of her cast, but I did feel bad that basically because she was just cast on, like, the randomly assorted worst team in challenges, she ends up having to barely not make the merge. And maybe it's also because she's come onto podcasts and, again, has been active on social media. Maybe in a different world, to your point, if it's like a pre-jury season over, Lyrsa could have seen a second life. But I really liked what I saw of her on this season.
I completely agree. Aside from Natalie, she is someone that I think is worth really talking about. And falls victim to the fact that this cast is just so strong overall
Hmm.
that I think that we can make a much stronger case for her needing to return or being in consideration, if not for the fact of how many other options there are. And I agree, like she I think that the season could be different for her if she can just survive that swap tribe format. Like I really think that she had a lot in her, and I would love to see what another game for her would look like, because I think she's really fun. But yeah, I agree with you. That's why I'm saying, like, I would love for there to be a theme where we bring back people
Hmm.
that aren't just like the obvious top people, that give us the second chances of people that it's a true, not just a second chance at playing the game, but it's like a second chance of showing us what we missed out on
Hmm.
by them, just not making it far enough in their initial game. And that's someone that I again feel like I would be happy to see again. I just don't know uh if, depending on what 50 looks like, I just don't know if that's where it would happen.
To that point, do you think they should have found one other person that got medevaced before day 3 and have them and Pat return alongside Bruce for Survivor
Oh, wow.
45?
I mean, that that at least kind of makes it a little bit more fair if you want.
Yeah, because
I mean,
I
it's
mean,
like
it's
it's
it's an incredibly rough outing for Pat. That those who don't remember, it was very, very rough weather for the first part of David
yeah,
versus Goliath, to the point that they are
they got
actually
evacuated.
evacuated at
Mhm.
one point due to a cyclone. And so, for those that don't know, contestants are voted back to and from tribal council challenges, etc. On the way back from the first immunity challenge that the Davids lost, there was some really, really inclement weather, and the bow was tossing and turning back and forth. And it got to the point that apparently they hit a really rough wave, and Pat like landed on his back wrong and like put it into incredibly bad shape, to the point where he was medevaced before even getting to cast a vote. So I always have a soft spot for him as well. Of course, Pat Tweaks Backs All Right is one of my favorite wand off earworms, but it's interesting, yeah, to see like Bruce get an opportunity to come back almost immediately, but just due to the circumstances, there wasn't that chance for Pat.
No, and I think that truly that it would have been the one point where it made sense, because I think
Mm,
that, when you're bringing back someone that didn't even get to a vote, you're not really setting them up to play in a way that other people who actually at least, played one full round of Survivor did. And that's why I think including him on like any other returnee cast doesn't feel right.
mm.
Whereas, that idea you
It's
have
like putting
of
David
him.
Alexander on Big Brother All Stars.
Right. Right. That's why I actually think it's too bad, because I do like that idea you had about, like, bring him and Bruce as like captains of a new
Mhm.
cast, where it's like, well, we're almost all on the same page. It's like I went through, a lot of this process, and I was kind of there, but I didn't really get to play. Yeah, so I mean, sometimes this is just how these things work out, but I would hesitate to ever bring back someone in his situation with on a true returnee cast. But again, that's why it's like there's been so many great people that have played Survivor that, look at the immense list that you're coming up with while trying to do this Survivor 50 wish list. Like, we could come up with numerous returnee seasons with different themes and use a ton of different people. And I just think that that's a fun way to do it. Like, why can't we do 50A, 50B, 50C? Like, I'm just saying. It could
Well,
be fun.
listen, it only makes sense that Modern Survivor, which could sometimes confuse with its amount of advantages and idols, would also confuse with like the subsets of seasons that would exist simultaneously.
No
But
theme. It's just 50A, 50B. Like, let's just make this so
yeah,
confusing.
not only we're just using numbers, now we're using numbers and letters in
Yeah.
combination as well. It's like reading a map. Well,
The
regardless, Jenny,
hashtag will
now
be a mess.
yeah, we had the map to Survivor David versus Goliath. Now we got to pick some landmarks. Let's do
Oh,
this.
yeah.
Let's try to make it more streamlined here. Why don't you give me your top 5 and I will see if my top 5 matches up and we'll
Okay.
see
Because I feel
who's
like
the
we're
commonality
probably
here.
I think we're very close to being on the same page here, which is
Yes.
why I thought that this would be a hard exercise, but at the same time, knowing what the limits are, I do think that there are some very clear top choices here. So I would say that
Mhm.
my top 5 is
Baby.
going to be my top 5 baby is going to be. So I was preparing for the longest time for only 4.
Mhm.
And thank God we have an extra slot to work with here. For me, those 4 would have been Angelina, Christian,
Mhm.
Gabby, and Davy.
Mhm.
And so obviously I would like to keep those 4 within the 5. Now the 5
Okay.
spot is where things get a little complicated, and I feel like I have maybe 2 that I'm considering. Do you want to tell me where you're at, or do you want me to give you the ones I'm considering for that 5th spot?
No, because I we're very much on the same wavelength to the point that I can probably even imagine what the two you are between
Yeah.
for your 5th spot. So my top 5 also had the same 4 that you mentioned in Angelina, Davey, Christian, Gabby. I did have Mike as my 5th. Now, part of that is because I knew, obviously, coming into this that he does want to play again. Honestly, that 5th spot is between him and Natalie for me.
That's the same. Yeah. Those are the exact same 2 people.
And I think that between Mike making it so far through the game, between Mike obviously having a large reputation to him now, even more so from the outside world that could bring eyes to Survivor. The fact that he does have, in compared to Natalie, a little bit more age on his side. Mike is 54, whereas Natalie is now 63, which is not like a huge non-starter, but look, a significant chunk of time between the two of them. And the fact that he is still in the good graces of production to the point that Jeff actually called him before the new era started to be like, we're trying this thing. Do you think it'll work? I feel like as much as I adore Natalie and as much as I am almost guaranteed that there's a chance Natalie is probably going to get on through this list as a wild card, that I think Mike is much more likely to come back than Natalie.
Yeah, I think that's where I struggle with, because I yeah, the emotional part where I'm like, "Oh, we got a 5th spot. Let's get Natalie on." Um, Mike, are you telling me that if we don't put Natalie, like, how good can I feel about a wild card situation here? Like, how do you feel about that? Because I think
Do
that
you really think that if we don't put Natalie on, that the fans will be like, I'm good. I don't want to see Natalie Cole on a ballot?
yeah, but then it's like, well, does that mean that we should just do it here? I just
No,
want
we
to
only
open
have
it as
5.
okay. I really just I think I went in, especially because I was mostly thinking that we might still be restricted to 4.
Mhm.
Um that I was not really including Mike, just because I was like, even though it would be so great and it would be so fun, and you got to think that there's like the what ifs of being so close to, potentially of
Mhm.
having won that season. um I just really didn't think that I was going to be including him, because I was
Right.
like, will they even ask him? Is it even possible? And I feel like there's just, with both Mike and Natalie, there's a certain element of like, do you really think it'll happen?
Mhm.
That is kind of giving me pause, and it's making, but for different reasons. So it's like
Right.
really challenging me on like making a decision between the two. But I'm sensing from you, like, you're basically saying like, you think it should be Mike White for sure.
I personally am, if I have a horse in this race, it would be for Mike. Put me on season 4 of The White Lotus. But listen, I could be convinced for Natalie if you feel like resoundingly it should be Natalie over Mike. I mean, it does feel like in true Survivor fashion, I threw this little twist at you by being like, you had your mind set on 4, and so introducing a 5th quite
I
literally
already had to
opens the world
whittle.
up.
Yeah. Oh wow. Okay. I mean, I feel good about it no matter what. So
Hmm.
it's really fine. And I think that if we're using the rationale of like, how can you look at this cast and say you don't want this person back? And that's not that we're, if we don't include them, it's saying we don't want them back. But
Hmm.
it's like, oh my gosh. Yeah, okay. I think I can get on board. I think I can get on board here. I think we can lock this in. But this is, let me be on the record for saying Natalie deserves to be
Yeah,
on
I
on this
I don't
ballot.
I don't disagree. People will certainly let their voices be heard. I will get a full faceful of the Natalie napalm from the fans out there. But for today, we are sending forward to our high class resort that is the Survivor 50 wish list alongside ages. We have Mike White, age 54. We have Angelina Keeley, age 35. Davey Rickenbacker, age 36. Christian Hubicki, age 38, and Gabby Pascuzzi, age 31. We've got 2 Goliaths and 3 Davids, Jenny.
Okay, that's great. That's great. What a great short list. I just feel like such a strong short list, and I feel very very strongly that at least two of these people, at least two of these people will actually end up on Survivor 50.
All right. Well, speaking outside of Survivor 50, Jenny, is there anyone from this cast that you would want to see on another reality show?
Yeah, so it's like, I mean, you're always gonna think about, with this question, you're gonna think about like, okay, what are some of the shows that I like watch and podcast about? Obviously, like right now, I am podcasting Claim to Fame, and it's funny we made the joke, but like, you need to be a relative of a celebrity to be on Claim to Fame. You can argue Mike White is a celebrity; he definitely
Yeah,
is.
can one of
So
Mike White's relatives be on it? And
yeah,
much like John Cryer, he shows up.
yeah, and that would be, oh my god, what a gift that would be. But I actually was thinking of a different show I have podcasted, um, the Dondi, Deal or No Deal Island,
Ooh.
which I think like, we talk about some of these people who've played Survivor or maybe Big Brother, being brought back onto shows that are a little bit shorter time commitment and,
Hmm.
like the traders of it all. And we just saw, for those who didn't watch Deal or No Deal Island, Boston Rob returned to TV to play that game and did quite well.
Hmm.
And I think that it's just like, wow, how appealing to play this shorter commitment. They're basically glamping. It's got some social elements, but it's also just got a little bit of luck and a little bit of knowing your odds. And I couldn't help but think of Christian Hubicki for that.
Yeah. I
I can
also
just
think
imagine him like, playing the odds of, and I know that he at least like, I don't know if he was fully watching it, but Deal or No Deal Island sent him like one of those like promo
promotion
boxes.
boxes. Yeah.
Yeah. He did like an unboxing video for me.
Oh,
Yeah.
I think Christian would be perfect if and when they do an American version of the Genius.
Mm.
He's a lock to bring on, right? This is a
Is that, do you think
guy.
that's happening?
I mean, I would imagine they're doing a British version that is releasing
Okay.
at some point, and so I imagine it's eventually going to make its way further to the West. And I think that Christian is someone that again thrives in these social strategy games, especially the chaos of like having a different game each and every time. He can obviously think in the moment as to how to deal with those things. So I think he would just be a fantastic lock for that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that, he's such a fun character and he's so smart and so capable that I could argue him being on any show really. But yeah, that's where my brain went. Like Listen, we talked about the, what ifs of Davey being on the traders. Again, I'm including the people that we're putting on this list, but like, I can't stop thinking about how fun Gabby would be on the traders. I think that any of these people, you bring them back, I would be happy. Now, could we see? You said Mike White's not going to do Big Brother. What about a celebrity Big Brother?
He could possibly do a celebrity Big Brother. I think that could be
I think he's a bigger
very fun.
celebrity than many people they've had on. So
100%. Maybe he would do like a reindeer game style. Like I can leave and come back, right? Like I don't have to
yeah,
live here, do I?
yeah. I mean, that would be really fun. Let's get the trifecta going here. I
I'll just
would
say
be
let's.
fully in favor
How,
of that.
how about Angelina on Let's Make a Deal?
Yeah, that's perfect. It's great. I mean,
No,
she
I mean
could be on Deal or No Deal Island too. It's like you're
I
making deals.
no, I think Angelina should be the banker on Deal or No Deal Island. I think
Oh,
she should be the
okay.
one being like, "This is the offer that I'm making." I think,
Hmm.
with no offense to
I
Howie
mean,
Mandel, I think that would be the much bigger reveal at the end of the finale.
yeah. Yeah, that would be very, very fun. Sign me up for that. That sounds great.
Well, Jenny, much like the banker himself, we were wealthy in this podcast to get so much great content, to go through such a great cast, and ultimately produce 5 names to put on the short list in the form of Mike White, Angelina, Davey, Christian, and Gabby. Monday, we are doing Edge of Extinction, a very interesting season where we get 4 returning players, we get the introduction of the Edge of Extinction that causes one of the most unsuspecting winners of all time in the form of Chris Underwood. Jenny, who from this season would you put on your personal wish list?
Oh, for Edge of Extinction, I would put Victoria.
All right, there we
That's
go.
my that's the top choice that in the quick thinking that I did. Was that quick thinking?
That was quick thinking. I'd
Yeah,
say pretty quick thinking, but
I think she'd be fun.
we're going to try to not speed our way through what is, again, a very intriguing cast for Edge of Extinction, as I'll be joined by Matt Ligori to break down the cast of Survivor 38, the returnees, the newbies, etc. Jenny, we've alluded to it before, but you're doing plenty of podcasting out there right now. What would you like to plug for the listeners?
The aforementioned Claim to Fame. If you are not watching Claim to Fame, you are missing out on a wonderful, strategic, and fun show.
Yes.
Over on ABC and I believe streaming on Hulu. We have just at this point just finished our week 3 of Claim to Fame season 3, and Rob and I got together with the great Kelly Wentworth.
Oh, we'll be talking about her
To
tomorrow.
So yeah, exactly. Very timely. So check that out. robhasawebsite.com/fame feed. We have a dedicated Claim to Fame feed. And anything else I'm doing, I'll be on social media at Jenny Autumn. And I'm so glad we got to do this, Mike.
I know.
Damn these limited time podcasts, because the two of us could literally just marathon. We are like the Christian Hubicki endurance challenge of
Right?
podcasting sometimes, where it's like, we can just keep this going.
And having you on was as sweet and delicious as a macaron, which I've had plenty of. So I'll be back on a Monday with Matt Ligori to talk through Survivor Edge of Extinction, but definitely recommend Claim to Fame, especially if you don't watch Big Brother and you're looking for something to occupy your Wednesday nights until Survivor comes back in less than a couple months. Definitely check out Claim to Fame and the podcast coverage. Speaking of podcasts, I hope everyone has a great weekend. Rest up, because we are going to start entering the end game as we look at the end of the 30s and beginning of the 40s next week, starting with Edge of Extinction on Monday. Thank you all so much for listening. Take care. Bye-bye.